Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of Leadnap Gaming. This week we're going to talk about getting ready for the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, also known as IAE, also known as the annual sale. Of course, that last one's a bit of a misnomer. It's one of two annual full catalog sales, but for a long time we only had the one and this was it, hence the name. Well, you can also score everything at Invictus Week. IAE is better put together. It's easier to work around and get everything you're looking for. Now, next week, we'll be talking more about fleet planning and what I call the package trap. This week is more about being prepared for IAE so you can make moves you want to make. I had originally thought to release this back in September, to give you time to build up a savings and prepare yourself for IAE. I decided not to, however, because in the long run, having a big pile of cash for IAE could be detrimental. And I don't just mean to your landlord's bottom line either. Later in this video, we'll talk about some spending concerns, but we have to cross some other ground first. Before we cover any of that, let's go over some truths about the annual sale to be aware of. This is not an exact science, but generally IAE unveils at least one new concept. Though the pros at CIG are masters of getting you to part with your hard-earned, and you're likely to see both a high and low token released. Now what does that mean? When we talk about tokens, we're talking about ships sold with LTI, lifetime insurance, which is generally considered a highly valuable commodity. I'm being very careful how I word things here, so do pay attention to that. When I say CIG is likely to release a high and low token, what I mean is they're likely to introduce a sub $100 concept and an expensive concept. This is because concept sales are usually the only time LTI is offered, and that requires war bond, or real-world cash payment. CIG is also likely to introduce the low token first, expecting the hype train to load up those sales. Then when they drop that new hotness, you start looking at your monthly budget to see if you can't squeeze one of those in there too. You might have gone in planning to spend an amount, and they pull a little extra out of you. Typically, and I'm convinced they have the data to back this up, the target is probably around $700, imagining you probably aim on the high end to spend around $500. You can remove the zeros to get the low token value here, by the way. You can see this with the last two major release milestones, CitizenCon earlier this month, where the $220 400i and the $500 Liberator were sold. You can also see it at last year's IAE with the $70 Nomad and the $600 Perseus. In both scenarios, you're hovering around the $700 target. The 400i was a poor token for the masses. CIG knows many a fleet builder intend to take advantage of the low token as a true LTI token, a ship used to upgrade into other ships, keeping the LTI. The 400i allowed whales to pull that off, but for the larger part of the citizen community, that was asking to double what they've put into the game, lifetime. It's very likely that you will see a low token at this year's IAE. Again, we didn't get one at CitizenCon, but not giving buyers an LTI token to work from impacts CIG's income at IAE. Because if you have a handful of shiny new tokens, suddenly picking up those CCUs seems worthwhile. And if you went in planning to buy a CCU here and there for what you already had tokened out, nothing puts the impulse buy on like suddenly being able to add another few ships to the stable. Then wham, the big token drops, and if you don't buy that, well, you're just going to have a loser fleet. These are traps. This is why I waited to point this out, in the real hopes that you don't have the time to put $700 to $1,000 together ahead of IAE, but while you still have time to put together an amount of money that would be reasonable to you. Now, don't take this the wrong way. For some of my viewers, the plan is very much to drop a few grand next month, and there is nothing wrong with that. The major takeaway, however, the if you take nothing else from this video, take this away thing, is that ship buying and fleet planning are games in their own right, a sort of parallel game to the game of Star Citizen. I am going to unlock the doors and show you how to play that game effectively, but all of the players in this shadow game know the pitfalls. When I was a young troop, before improvised explosive device was a common phrase, I was going through combat engineer training, learning how to put in and take out landmines. One of my instructors who spent time in Bosnia taught us to watch the children play. Children who grow up next to a minefield know where the mines are, and they'll play in the field because they know where it's safe to be and not be. I'm showing you a minefield. inside of which is buried treasure in the form of Star Citizen ships you want to have in your fleet. There's a lot of us kids playing around in this field. We know, usually from someone else's error or our own, where the mines are. I'm spending all this time making this point because this is the normal scenario you find yourself walking into the field. You've spent maybe $100 to $200 on the game, maybe even less. You're willing to spend the money to get your dream Carrack or whatever, but you know from the whispers that you can get ships for less, and you want to know how, not wanting to shell out the $600 for it. So you head over to my Discord server or watch my videos, then you explain your conundrum to one of the many awesome disciples of this system who share with you the secrets of our cultish ways, showing you how to cut out bits of the cost, reduce the price, and how it works even better on the ships you always wanted, but always said you couldn't ever afford. Suddenly, you can, and you're saving money doing so too. Except you're not going to save money. You are going to spend even more than you intended because, like Odysseus' sailors, you hear the sweet song of the CIG siren. When you realize you can get them for less, when you realize you can make reservations, you go overboard. You might be thinking that only happens if you have real money, but a few years ago at IAE, I used $220 to put $10,000 worth of ship into my fleet. Bro, I'll give you my firstborn if you show me how to take $220 and have a 10G fleet. Well, slow your roll, Grasshopper, because I used $220 to reserve a fleet that would cost me 10 large to put into my hangar. I would still have to spend every one of those $10,000 to get it, and when those ships are tangibly in your fleet just a few paychecks away, it's easy to rationalize nickel and diming your fleet together. And before you know it, you did spend the $10,000 you said you would never spend on a video game. It's the same reason a casino's fine with you winning a big hand every now and then. And they throw you comps to keep you in the building when you do, because when they give you money, you're almost certainly going to spend even more of your own giving it back. People doubt that you can do this because surely CIG would shut it down if you could really save hundreds of dollars on some of Star Citizen's biggest ships, right? No. Again, CIG knows if they let you do this, you're going to spend more money. And they lose nothing because until you do, you get nothing back. Granted, this is a strange line from a guy who supports the project and makes videos each week telling you how good this all is. The thing I know, though, is if you don't overspend and you appropriately build the fleet of your dreams, you will enjoy Star Citizen for all it offers today and in the future. That's my goal. Now that I've put you on the defensive to guard every last penny, let's flip the table and talk about the big deals in front of you and the considerations to have with them. I didn't just spend all that time warning you about the landmines to not have you play in our mythical treasure-filled minefield. IAE is going to present you with the best opportunity to lock down the costs of ships you either know you want or think you want. Well, next week, I'm going to cover the nuts and bolts of our sausage maker. This week, I want to show you the recipes so you can marinate on the what before we do the how. Yes, new concepts are going to steal the show, be the marquee event, but we're here for the prospects. We want to see the opening bands so we can say we followed them before it was cool. You need to go into IAE with a plan. I've done a number of videos, enough to have even made a playlist on fleet planning, talking about considerations to have in your fleet. What do you want to do in the verse? Pick one or two things that are not combat. What are they? Build your fleet out of those, keeping a combat ship or two for when the space wars do kick off. The next big money-saving step here is in line with focus. Keep it small. Not the ships necessarily, but the fleet. Let's take a look at a Star Citizen reality people are just starting to notice in 3.15. Here's the size of Stanton. Here's the size of Pyro. And here's the range of your little ship. Now, as inventory is localized, as your ships live where you left them, you need to start considering what the impact really will be. To begin with, you should begin to recognize that the verse is really optimized to you staying in one place. Kind of like real life. Traveling a ways over to visit a friend and do something together is something that we plan ahead of time, right? We pack our bags, allotments of items that we're going to need, and then we intend to return after a specified period of time. Which means most of us don't buy RVs as daily drivers. An RV is a very nice thing to have when you go on the road to visit a friend for a week, but it's a poor choice for everyday driving around town. Which means for Star Citizen, consider that you should have a ship or two that are suitable for that long distance travel, but you'll probably confine most of your inverse life to a single system or two for most things. Now, those systems might change over time, but all of your things have to migrate with you when that happens. The other takeaway then is that you are likely to want to move most of your things when moving day does come. The more ships you have, the longer and more agonizing that becomes. I always talk about a fleet with 3 ships because when you decide to pull up stakes and move 6 systems over for new mineral deposits to mine, the move's pretty easy. Now, 3 ships is pretty minimalist for many a fleet builder, myself included, so maybe you don't always move all your ships, keeping a 3-ship detachment around all the time, but returning to the homeland from time to time as needed. This is what most of us will inevitably end up doing, leaving behind the big ships, the fun little ships, and so on, where we're willing to journey back to switch it up for a new duration away. Still, you're going to find yourself from time to time needing to grab that one ship you left 6 systems over. If you have a bunch of little ships, you're going to need a Liberator to move them from system to system. If you only have a few ships, you don't need the Liberator, and you only now paid for a few ships you actually really enjoy being on. All of that is money saved. You can cut that down by staying focused. Outside of combat ships, I own predominantly cargo and mining ships, eventually only having an Orion to do the mining part. I don't own medical ships because it doesn't interest me. The Cuddy Red over there is Little Leads. It's his. If you own a medical ship but don't play medical, when you want to mess around playing ambulance, you have to travel an hour to where you parked it, then an hour back to the action to play with it. Will the action still be there in 2 hours? Is it worth doing so? What about the 2 hours to put it back? I have friends who have Apollos. Why have one more ship to move when I relocate my base that I have to travel a long distance to get to, and then I got to put it back and then get back 4 whole hours in our example? Or I could just jump on a friend's Apollo and do medical with them. Having a focus helps you keep a slimmer fleet, in turn saving money you didn't really mean to spend, but it was a cool ship, so, which also helps you avoid the hype trap. Is the new Argo super server ship cool? Yeah, that thing looks awesome, and it is a cool 3-story server room. But you don't do data running. It's a cool ship, but you're not going to play on it, so you don't spend the money. Even when the ships do enter your focus, is the new Drake Cat 2 super hauler neat looking? You bet. It's the new hotness, and you're even a cargo main. Maybe you get it because it's better. But if that's the case, you just CC your Herc C2 to it because it makes your C2 obsolete. You spent money, but you use the money you already invested too. Or you recognize your M2 is still better, so you pass. Last week, we looked at the 400i. I said I probably wouldn't keep it because I have a 600i, and while it would be nice to have something a little smaller to work with most days, I still occasionally need the larger 600i. I don't need 2 RVs though. Let's use a different example. You just made Concierge. Congratulations. And you want to celebrate. A nice ribeye sounds good, so you head out onto the town to enjoy one. If you live in a town with one steakhouse, you go there. But they're out of ribeye and they just have a New York strip. It's delicious. You go home and you jump into the verse in your new ship. If you live in a town with 2 steakhouses, the one only has the New York strip, but the other steakhouse can't make a drink to save their life, and the guy in the kitchen's actually a short order cook and he doesn't know how to cook a proper steak. Once you choose which one to eat at, you're stuck wondering if you should have gone to the other. Sure, one had exactly what you wanted, but couldn't do it right. The other didn't have exactly what you wanted, but they would have made the substitute to perfection. In a sort of ignorance is bliss, when you have less ships, you spend less time wondering if you took the right ship for the job. Han Solo took his cargo ship into battle against the Death Star, because it's what he had to work with. I can't promise this, but you're likely to enjoy a verse more with a touch of difficulty. A touch of, how do I make this work? Rather than, I have a ship for that. Again, next week we're diving into the how-to, where I'll show you the ways to save money getting the ships you dream of and how to build that dream fleet. Until then, I want you to mull over what I mentioned here today, and I have an exercise for you. On a sheet of paper, draw 3 columns. In the first, decide on what ships you would own if you could only own 3. In the middle, 5 ships, and in the last column, 10. Really think about this. When you have less ships, what do you sacrifice? If you can have more, does the same ship sound appealing? I'll be posting my list once I'm done with it. Until then, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, and make sure you're subscribed for a chance to add a Taurus to your fleet for free. The best money savings of all. Share this video with your friends, and I will catch you all next time.